Hi, and welcome to The Working Songwriter, the show where today's best songwriters come to talk shop. I'm your host, Joe Pug. Each episode here, we host a distinguished guest, and we ask them to go deep on their inspiration, on their process, on the general ups and downs of making a life in music. So, whether you're a grizzled veteran, living in a house that you bought in East Nashville in 1991 for $35,000, or else a scrappy upstart, 2 years in to a 10-year town, this is your show, because ultimately it is what every writer seeks most, an ironclad excuse to put off actually writing. Hey everybody, it's the last Friday of October 2021, and I thank you for joining us. This week's show is brought to you by Bandzoogle. Built by musicians and for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform to build a beautiful website for your music. I'm old enough to remember when you had to pay somebody called a web developer to get a website made, and it would always be some guy named Carter who drove a Kia Sportage with murdered out windows and a Yellow Wolf bumper sticker, and who was always trying to sell you Ritalin that he stole from his cousin. And old Carter would charge you about $1,000 for a website that would be obsolete in 6 months. But it's the future now, you guys. That's not how it works anymore. We're allowed to have nice things now. One of those nice things is Bandzoogle. Bandzoogle powers the websites of tens of thousands of musicians around the world, from weekend warriors to Grammy winners. All the features you need for a professional website are already built in: hosting and a custom domain name, dozens of fully customizable design templates, tools to sell your music and merch commission-free. The Working Songwriter podcast listeners can go to bandzoogle.com to try it for free for 30 days. Use the promo code TWS, the initials of our show, TWS, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. If you'd like to hear some of my music live in the coming weeks, every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, I'm over on YouTube for Sunday Songs. That's a live stream. I'm live, I'm playing tunes live, I'm taking questions in the live chat, I'm taking requests in the live chat. It's a really fun, really interactive experience. I dare to say that we're building something of a community over there on Sunday nights, including many people who are listeners to this podcast. So come on over and be a part of it. Every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern over on YouTube. Head to YouTube and search for Joe Pug, or go to joepugmusic.com and click on the live stream tab. Finally, if you enjoy this podcast, if you'd like to help it remain a viable endeavor for me, here's a couple things that you could do to help. First, you could become a supporter of the show over at Patreon. Patreon is a platform that allows you to directly support creative endeavors that you find meaningful. You just head to their site, Patreon. You search for The Working Songwriter, or you search for my name, and then you sign up to kick in a few bucks every month for the show. Think of it as a voluntary subscription. A subscription that you don't have to pay, but that you choose to pay because you dig the show and you won't miss a few bucks at the end of the month. If just 1% of our listenership would give the price of a cup of coffee every month, it would make an immense difference. So thank you to everybody who's supporting the show over there at Patreon. And if you're not in a place where you can contribute that way, there's still 2 ways that you can help out the show for free. First, you could leave us a rating in the iTunes store, or second, you could simply tell a friend about the show. Spread the word about the show to somebody who you think might dig it. The simple math on those 2 last things is that they will help me much more than they will be a pain in the ass for you. Okay, I'll end all the harassment there. This was a very enlightening episode. I learned so much talking to Luke and Beth, so I hope you dig it. Guests this week are at the vanguard of writing songs and publishing songs in Nashville, Tennessee. Luke Laird is one of the most recorded songwriters in America. Of all the guests we've had on this show over the last 5 years, I would have to imagine his songs have been listened to the most, considering that he's had 24 number 1 hits. His wife, Beth, runs the publishing company that they own together, Creative Nation, which has become a home for promising young songwriters as well as accomplished veterans like Barry Dean and Laurie McKenna. Luke Laird's first number one hit came with So Small, sung by Carrie Underwood, which went to the top of the charts for 3 weeks and then went platinum. Since then, he's had number one hits for Blake Shelton, Tim McGraw, Kenny Chesney, and Eric Church. He's also worked with John Legend, Neo, Ingrid Michaelson, Jason Aldean, and many others. He's been nominated for a slew of Grammy Awards, and he won 2 for the album that he produced and wrote with Casey Musgraves. In 2012, the BMI Country Awards named him Songwriter of the Year, and in 2015, the Academy of Country Music gave him their version of the honor. Beth Laird got her start as a receptionist in Nashville, but did not stay behind the switchboard for very long. She's worked for BMG Music Publishing, Windswept Music Publishing, and BMI. At the helm of Creative Nation, she has shepherded 20 number one songs and 60 radio singles. Needless to say, I was a kid in a candy store getting to ask them how they've managed to make all of this work. We caught up on the phone last week, and I got to hear about their journey so far. Luke and Beth Laird, thanks so much for coming on to the Working Songwriter Podcast. Luke, you grew up in the booming commercial music mecca of Hartstown, Pennsylvania. Of course, it makes sense that you would one day become a chart-topping songwriter. And Beth, you began your journey in the music business at Universal as an intern. And as everybody knows, most interns in the music business end up owning their own publishing company and management firm. So I don't even know what there is to ask about today because your story is so common, but I'll try my best. Luke, all jokes aside, can we start with you and hear you describe your journey from where you grew up to first arriving in Nashville?
Sure. So, yes, like you said, it's a booming metropolis, northwestern Pennsylvania. So where I grew up is very rural, small town. And that's probably, country music was pretty big actually up there. And by the time I was in high school, I really got into it. I loved all kinds of music, but I think country, it was during the 90s. There's the big country music boom in the 90s. And I just really got into it. Always loved music, played piano and guitar from the time I was young, and really was making up songs for a long time. But once I found country music, it felt like something that really just came naturally to me. And so I really wanted to see Nashville. And fortunately, my family, we came on a family vacation to Nashville the summer between my sophomore and junior year of high school. I always tell people this sounds cliche, but I went to the Bluebird Cafe because that's what you do when you like to write songs and you want to hear songwriters. And it just really kind of blew my mind. It just changed. It just made me realize that there's actually people in this town that this is what they do for a living as a job. And I don't think I'd really ever considered that. But after I saw a show at the Bluebird, I knew I wanted to be a songwriter. And so I went back to Pennsylvania, graduated from high school. My mom found out about the music business program at Middle Tennessee State University. And that seemed like we came actually the following summer, visited the school. I applied there, did their music business program. And really, the main reason I wanted to get there was because it was close to Nashville and I could start pursuing being a songwriter. So junior year of college, I finally get a car, can come up, it's about half hour away, make the drive to Nashville, start playing the open mic nights. And I'll just fast forward a little bit. There's another guy from my hometown named Bill Luther, who was already having some success as a songwriter. And he was really supportive and he encouraged me and really believed in me, thought that I had songs that were possibly good enough to get a publishing deal. So he set me up on my first initial publishing meeting. And once I met a guy by the name of Chris Oglesby at BMG. He was the first real publisher who really took an interest in my songs. And it really meant a lot. He didn't offer me a publishing deal the first songs I played for him, but he kept an open door. And so I was able to play him songs. As I would write new songs, I'd come play them. Didn't offer me a publishing deal, graduate college. Fortunately, I got hired as an assistant out on Brooks and Dunn's tour. And so I got the experience of being on the road, really being in the music business, a different side of the business, but it was awesome. And when we were off the road, I'd be in town taking publishing meetings, playing writers' nights. Finally, after a year after I graduated college, that's when I got offered my first publishing deal by that same guy, Chris Oglesby. And so here I am, still writing songs.
Let me ask you a question. What changed?
Yeah.
What did you have to learn about your craft that the no went to a yes as far as that publishing deal? I mean, you had to upskill in some way. So what did you have to learn as a songwriter that made the no go to a yes?
I think it was just, a lot of it was just writing better songs, digging in more, putting more thought into each line. But also, I feel like, of course, now being a publisher myself, I think publishers, when they sign a brand new songwriter, they want to know that you can really crank out songs, because if that's what you're going to get paid to do. So I was calling Chris every 2 weeks with new songs and was playing him new songs. So I think as much as of anything is he wanted to see if I was actually a songwriter and waking up every day and writing songs. So yeah, I think a lot of it was just kind of that development process of writing better songs and really cranking them out.
What sort of tools did you have to put in your toolkit to get to a place where you could crank out songs like that? I think a lot of people start and it's just, when the spirit moves you, you write a tune and maybe it's good, maybe it's not, but there you are. But you're talking about an entirely different process where it's much more of a job, so to speak. So
yeah,
how did you put yourself in that mindset and how did you go about doing that?
Well, I think, like you said, it's hard to make a living as a songwriter if you only do it when you're inspired. So it was just making the time, carving out time to be creative, whether I had an idea for a song or not. And a lot of times I find my ideas when I'm just sitting there with my guitar, and you have to have time alone to do that. And still to this day, even though it is my job, there's definitely days I don't feel like doing it. And some days I don't, but more times than not, I have that time carved out to at least try to get something, an idea, even if it's a musical idea. But sitting there with the guitar, for me, I have to have that time to do it, or the songs won't come. I don't wake up, I don't have dreams of songs and like some people and just wake up and write it down.
Not the Billy Joe Shaver method is what
Right.
you're saying. Now, Beth, can you talk to me? What was your road into the music business? How did you end up in Nashville?
Well, I grew up in Winchester, Tennessee. It's only an hour and a half from here, but it's actually a world away. It's kind of like Luke was saying, not quite as rural as his hometown, which was about population 300. Mine was bigger, but it's still a small town. My dad owned the local tractor company. My mom was a teacher. So, just pretty normal small town upbringing. I didn't actually realize there was a music business here this close. I didn't know. So I went to the University of Alabama for college, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I just knew I had to get out of town. Mm-hmm. And I went for a PR degree just because it was in communications, and I thought, well, I can use this for a bunch of things, but I don't know what I want to do. So the summer after my freshman year, I was coming back home, and ironically, my mom ran into my old babysitter at home in the grocery store, and she asked what I was doing. And my mom's like, she's coming home, she's looking for a job. And her name was Regina Stuvey, and she said, why don't you move her to Nashville and let her intern for me? So my mom came home and said, I ran into your babysitter today and I'm going to move you to Nashville and you're going to work for her for free for the summer. I was like, no, I'm not. And she was like, yes, you are. And she actually negotiated a deal at the extended stay hotel, dropped me off. So my first day was walking into Capitol Records, seeing my babysitter, but both of us kind of more, me as an adult.
Right.
And to be honest, that summer changed my life. I completely fell in love with the music business. I realized that there's so much creativity and magic in what, at that time I'd only seen artists, so I was around artists, but that there were all these business people behind them, helping them fulfill their creative dreams. And so I realized I'm not musical, but I could help them on the business side. And so that just became a big passion for me. So I asked if I could come back after my junior year, moved here again, interned for free for a summer. And then when I graduated, I didn't have a job. I didn't get credit for that internship at Alabama because they didn't really have anything to do with music. Sure. But I knew I just had to be in Nashville because they don't post jobs. So I graduated and moved here 2 weeks after. And I actually got a job at Nashville Bun Company and Bun Lady Transport. They make English muffins and hamburger buns for McDonald's and Pepperidge Farm.
I thought that was just some hipster name for a publishing company or something.
Yeah, well, it sounds cool. And they shipped them. So they'd started a new shipping company with refrigerated trucks. And they needed basically someone to answer the phones and be on the next tail with the drivers, booking back calls and stuff. So I got the job and I told them I had an awesome boss, but I just said, hey, I'm moving here for the music business. I just want you to know that if something comes up. And I kept in touch with Regina, but she was really one of the only ones I knew. But I was just like, I'll do anything for free. Like, you need someone to take the plastic off the plaques. What do you want? Like, I just wanted to be in it so bad. And about a year in, her husband, Ron Stuvey, took over B&G Music Publishing, and the receptionist left. And so Regina asked Ron if he would give me an interview. So I got that job. I was so excited. And then in the same moment, I realized that people were graduating from MTSU and Belmont with music business degrees. And I didn't even know what a publishing company was. I didn't even know there were staff songwriters. Mm-hmm. So I think that moment was really critical because it really lit a fire under me to learn quickly. Because I think I realized, wow, this is a massive opportunity that I'm getting. And there's a lot of people, that have more knowledge and more relationships than me in this town. So I started going out every night. I asked everybody in there what I could do. So I would kind of assist everyone in there just to learn what the different jobs were. And I learned as much as I could, and I learned quickly. And I think that helped because I just started speeding up as fast as I could to learn. Ironically, when I got that job, Luke was actually probably the youngest and the new songwriter there with no cuts or hits at B&G Music Publishing.
That's great. No, you said a moment ago that, you came to town, you fell in love. There was a beauty about the business. You fell in love with it. You fell in love specifically with the idea that there were people who maybe weren't necessarily doing the creative work or the artwork themselves, but they had a talent that they could draw to help those other people's talents. Can you give me some examples of scenarios where you saw people on the business end really help somebody develop, and give me an idea of what that synergy actually looked like on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So I was in the publicity department for 2 summers with Regina. She was the head of publicity. I will tell you, even though I was getting a PR degree and fell in love with the music business, I realized very quickly I did not want to do that. Yes. It is not for me. But I think that the beauty of it that I saw was I was there when Keith Urban was working on the Golden Road album. I was there when Dierks Bentley was putting out his first album and Cindy Thompson was putting out her first album. So Regina had amazing relationships. And obviously, as a publicist, you have really direct relationships and you're helping set up events and go to events. And so I think I really got to see that relationship behind the scenes. And I realized how important it was for creatives to have people they trust and to have someone who really understands where they want to go, what they want to do, and to take care of their business, because they have to be freed up to be creative. And obviously with artists, the least amount of their time is on stage. Contrary to what everybody thinks, they sing probably the least amount of time. So really watching someone be a filter for them and say, this is going to be helpful, this isn't, or let's look at these opportunities and find what's best for you, or what do you really want to do, or how do I take this amount of time of you spending doing an interview and really grow it and use it in multiple locations so that more eyes and ears get on your music. So I think it was just in a lot of ways, I saw how it really worked hand in hand, and how it was really helpful for the creative person to ultimately be creative and do a great job. And then also on the other end for the business person to be able to shepherd that, but then to be able to help them grow that audience.
I got that. Now, Luke, you, as you said, eventually you turn that no into a yes. You get signed to a publishing deal. You walk into the building. You meet your future bride. Good for you. That's a great thing.
What more can I ask for?
Now, but before Creative Nation starts, and sometime around 2011, you see some success as a songwriter. So, can you talk about that portion of your career? First of all, how did you learn to put together songs that would resonate with so many people? And then also, what did that feel like when things started to click and started to work?
Yeah. So when I first signed my publishing deal, I'd only written songs by myself. And so kind of a lot of the Nashville way is, they start setting you up on different co-writes with different writers who have different strengths than you do. And it's quite a learning curve. For me, it just felt pretty awkward at first to go in and write a song with somebody else. But after a few years, I really met some co-writers who really made me better, and hopefully I made them better. But it's one of those things when you have 0 hits or cuts or anything, nobody knows you. It's hard to get opportunities, but that's where a great publisher can help. And fortunately, I had some co-writers who had a lot more success than me at the time, and so I got to some situations in some rooms that the bar was just raised. And so my first cut was written with the writer I told you about, Bill Luther, and Hillary Lindsay, who are both 2 incredible songwriters in Nashville. And we got a cut on Leanne Womack's There's More Where That Came From album. So that was a huge moment for me. Just to have a song on an album, I could go out and pick it up and look at it and see my name. It's like, wow, this is actually happening. I mean, my paycheck wouldn't necessarily reflect that, but it was cool. And then, really a couple years, it was a couple years after that, really 5 years after I signed my publishing deal, when I had my first hit. And again, Hillary Lindsay brought me in on a write with Carrie Underwood going into her second album. We wrote a song called So Small. It ended up being a #1 single. And really from there, over the next few years, things kind of started to take off, because once you have a hit, other people say, who wrote that? Oh, let's write together, or different artists. And so that was really cool. And then another artist who I think I'm grateful took a chance on me and writing with me is Eric Church. And we really hit it off. First song we wrote, he cut on his Chief album, and then we wrote 2 more after that he put on there. And so I kind of had spanned the over here, Carrie Underwood, all the way over to Eric Church, and then got a lot of opportunities, different artists in between that. And then just, I think you know, after you do it for a while, your songwriting hopefully gets better and you develop the craft. And so I think just a combination of opportunities with writers better than me, with artists, and then just me writing more songs and becoming better. And honestly, hearing your song on the radio, I mean, it's still incredible. That would never get. I can't imagine that ever getting old.
Yeah.
Another feeling that's very comparable, if not better, is going to a concert and seeing, you know, thousands of fans singing words that you just wrote on the couch or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's really cool to be a songwriter. It really is.
Now, it's funny. It seems like in some ways it'd be a head trip to go from a place where you said before you even have a cut on anything, it's hard to get a right with anybody, to as soon as you get a number one hit, it's like the phone's ringing. And
Right.
I mean, is it kind of a head trip to a certain point where you sit down with certain other writers or certain artists and they're like, all right, man, well, where's my number one? You know?
Oh yeah, for sure. And what I tell like new writers, I mean, I work with a lot of new writers as well as seasoned writers, but it's kind of the same thing every time. You're starting from scratch. So none of us know for sure what's going to work. I mean, I do think having a few hits can help with confidence, but you're never overly confident because it's just such a shot in the dark. It's not like, I don't know, like other things like where if weightlifting, like I just keep getting stronger. You're gonna keep getting stronger. Songwriting, you may write something awesome one day and the next day but yeah, the crazy thing is once you have a few hits, you do get a lot more opportunities. And then it gets to the point where you have to be able to say no. And that could be hard for me because I always think of being that new writer. But you know, there's only so many days in a week, and that's where another great thing about Beth is having a great publisher. It's strategic writing. So just because there's two hit songwriters doesn't mean they should write together. Like I would want someone to be into the music I do to work with me. Same deal with me working with artists. If it's just not really my taste or what I'm really into, I'm just not going to do it. And it's not because they're not good, just that I don't know that I have a lot to offer a certain writer or artist.
You know, you mentioned the analogy of, well, if you're a weightlifter, there's a way to get from skinny dude to jacked. And it's, you know, it's a pretty straightforward process. Not so with creative work. One of those reasons is, you know, and I'm sure this is a question for you, Beth. There's no amount of sheer, you know, powerful marketing budget that can make people across the country love a song, right? So in a way, people are just going to kind of vote by their Spotify listens, by their, you know, records that they buy. They're just going to kind of vote on what they find compelling and what they find beautiful. So, as a publisher, as the person who's responsible for placing these songs and ultimately selling these songs, is that a scary thing to know? And how do you deal with that uncertainty in the process?
Yes, that's a great question, and it is very uncertain. I would say too, the extra added uncertainty risk for Luke and I is that we wanted to remain independent. So from the beginning till now, which 10 years next month, we have funded it ourselves. So it feels like that added weight of, I don't know. And I'm also, you know, pre-funding the dream. I think a lot of it is you really have to be okay with, well, first of all, you have to be okay with risk, like calculated risk. And you have to have good people around you to really weigh it out. But I would say ultimately too, I know this sounds so crazy, but because we usually are working with people very early on when there's not necessarily proven success, it is gut. And it is something about this songwriter is unique and different. We think that we have a plan to help them succeed, and we know we have the relationships to reach out to help to connect them better. But you don't know. And I think, I can be honest and say I can get caught up with that too, and just like the fear of it all. But realistically, once Luke and I had experience, me on the business side and him as a writer, I think it makes it easier to hone in on, we've seen this done ultimately the wrong way. And so we're not going to make those mistakes going in. Yes, we'll make mistakes and we're going to try things and fail, but it does help us to know, let's start from this place of our experience. And then we have this shared mindset of coming from two different perspectives, different sides of the music business. And we have great, music business managers around us. And so we have to take the leap, and we have to just really pour into whoever we take a shot on. And this is why we're so small. We're going to overserve, and we're really going to put everything we can possibly do behind it. But like you said, it happens or it doesn't. And you can do everything you want. And I have a hard time with this because I will just, try. But as Luke will tell me sometimes, you can bring opportunities, but you can't write the songs, and I have to remember that. And, some of it is timing and luck, and I can't control that, but you want it so bad for them.
So you mentioned a moment ago that, you brought your experiences to bear and you didn't want to do it the wrong way. Pretty hard in life to figure out the right way to do something, but you can
Yeah.
a lot of wrong ways to do things in life. I certainly have. Luke, from your perspective, from the creative perspective, what was the wrong way that you had seen it done at publishing houses that you wanted to see differently hanging your own shingle?
I think kind of goes back to strategy. I've seen where people will just book co-writes without really putting any thought to how each writer's personality, how do they, what are their, do they think that they could even work well together? Does their music even make sense together? And sometimes stuff that doesn't make sense ends up working, but I think sometimes it's such a hurry to, and I've seen the business side come in to mess things up too, where it's like a publisher is trying to get two of their writers on a song because they're thinking about the piece of the pie. And I think that that's just such the wrong way to, I think if you get great songs, no matter how you get them, in the long run, it's going to benefit everyone. But if it's just hey, let's pile in these two writers with this person because we'll probably get a hit and then we'll own more of it or whatever, it's just, that is not, I don't know, that's not creative to me. That's just a waste of time a lot of times. But so yeah, I think the right way is to have a strategy. We've talked about this, but all of our writers Beth started making everybody fill out goal sheets. And it's amazing the different goals that writers have. Not every writer, not every writer's goal is to write 10 hits in a year. Some writers, it's hey, I'm trying to write one great song that could be nominated for Song of the Year. Or sometimes it's I want to make a record this year. I want to focus more on that. Or for me, some years it's been, I want to have more days to write by myself. And so you got to take into account all those different things. And sometimes we think we're doing it the right way and look back and that was probably the wrong way.
Yeah, indeed. Are you stuck in a rut? Are you tired of listening to that Jimmy Buffett 20th Century Masters CD over and over again and need some new music? Are you sick of making hamburger helper beef stroganoff for dinner every night and you want something new to cook? What you are looking for, my friends, is the Enthusiast Digest. That's my monthly newsletter, which arrives in your inbox the first Sunday morning of every month, bursting with musical recommendations, poetry selections, recipes and cooking techniques for my favorite dishes, and items of general interest culled from the vast cesspool that is the internet. The Enthusiast Digest is free to subscribe to. If you dig the poetry that you hear on this show and the artists that you're hearing from, you'll dig the newsletter because I approach it with the exact same sensibility of curation. Go to joepugmusic.com/newsletter today to sign up for free. That is joepugmusic.com/newsletter. It takes approximately 15 seconds to sign up for a free newsletter that will enrich the first Sunday of your month with a veritable cornucopia of new and delightful recommendations. That's the Enthusiast Digest, the first Sunday of every month. Sign up for free at joepugmusic.com/newsletter. With the amount of success that Luke had in the writer's room and that Beth had in the boardroom, they could have had a very comfortable life working in someone else's shop. And yet, they decided to hang their own shingle, to take a risk. In the parlance of our times, as Walter Sobchak would say, they bet on themselves. There's a part of the human spirit, maybe the largest part, that yearns for that challenge. There's a part of each of us that feels incomplete without striving, without putting ourselves to the maximum test. And starting their own shop was that test for Luke and Beth. There's a wonderful poem in Vittoria Colonna's Sonnets to Michelangelo that speaks to this part of us. It is Sonnet 18. If the heavens gave up a shining light to set fire to the earth, so that it burns for our salvation, what proud ice unlearns that fire in our frozen minds so that we fight against the fire to preserve our cold night? The body resists the fire and yearns for comfort, but the searching spirit turns toward it. How to get the body past spite to joyful embrace of its decrepit state? How to suffer pain and want and pain willingly? To learn to give up, to wait, to trust that all this torment is not in vain. Lord, help me to hold the difficult, hate the easy, commit to fire and strain. So I come from a very different perspective. I've spent the last 10 or 15 years on the road playing music and doing things that way. So I promise you that I'm not being glib when I ask this question. This is a genuine question that I just don't know the answer to. What is a publishing company? On a very fundamental level, what are you in the business of? Is it music sales? Is it like to customers? Is it intellectual property? Is it something deeper than that, like on a spiritual level, trying to take like the spiritual pulse of the country and serve that need? Like, how do you guys conceive of what your business actually is on a fundamental level?
Well, publishing, I would say first is songs and copyrights, but
Yeah, I would say like for us, yes, it's building copyrights and owning intellectual property. And then if you own different shares of different copyrights, you can put them together and eventually sell that catalog. Because a lot of publishers, I think people don't understand that a lot of publishers are trying to really just run and break even, because you have to front all the staff, rent, resources, songwriter advances, demos. I mean, you front all that money before there's any money coming in. And once you do have a song recorded or released or on the radio, you really don't get paid till a year after that. So it takes a long time to recoup the money. And a lot of times once you do actually recoup and make money, then you reinvest that in more writers and copyrights. So a lot of publishers run and break even to own pieces of valuable copyrights where they can eventually sell the catalog. And that's how they would, like, as a business, make money. I would say for us on a different level too, Luke and I feel like if we're going to spend this much time working, we really want to spend our life and our time with people we like. And there's a big part of us starting this to just want to work with songwriters that inspire us and staff we want to be around. So, I mean, on a larger level, I would say everybody here we truly believe in and like hanging out with. And that is one reason why we've grown so slow and so strategically, and we stay small. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to just run around trying to buy and sling songs. Like, we want to invest in people, and I want people who have a really unique skill set that we can value, and that we can find out how to, yes, make it commercial and successful, but not change it. And I think, on the business side, that might have been, it's probably one thing I saw I didn't like, was when everything got so much about the business, kind of like Luke was saying, and not about the creativity or the songs or the humans. Mm-hmm. For me, that was hard. And so I think I always felt like, guys, like, look around. If you don't treat these writers well and you don't have great songs, you don't have business. But sometimes it just gets so skewed, because when you're doing it on a big level, you have 100, 150 songwriters. Yeah, that's a lot of calendars. That's a lot of people. And so it's not that you're not great creatives. You're just trying to do the best you can. And I didn't like that. And when I worked at BMI, I served so many people, I just felt burnt out and like I wasn't really able to help. So this is a way I feel like we can focus on great art, helping people really fulfill their creative dreams and partner with them. And, we get to celebrate success together, but when it's not working, we get to dig in and do strategy together. And I think one thing Luke and I aren't afraid of is, the hard stuff. So we're not necessarily looking for the generic down the middle writer that can just pop out a hit. Yes, we need hits to have a business, but kind of going off of Luke's success, he's always had hits that were kind of on the edge of the box or that were new or different. He's still does that. That's what I love about his music, is he's always coming up with original ideas that kind of push the envelope or that sound unique. And so I think we want that in everyone we sign here, and being able to say we value that uniqueness. We don't want it to go away.
It almost sounds like you're saying, to a certain degree, because human beings aren't widgets, to do what you want to do, in a way, it can't scale past a certain point, because there's only so many hours in a day. I mean, I guess you could get to a point with company culture where you could hire, a number of lieutenants to help you and continue that culture. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like, once you get to the point where there's 150 people on staff.
Neither of us have ever had that dream. So.
I don't have that desire. I will say I have felt like, now that we're hitting into year 10, I've always really cared about company culture. Again, going back to what I didn't want to be, I wanted everyone to feel safe and thrive and be able to contribute ideas and respected, and all of those things are really important to me. But I think I'm finally getting it really honed in on a team where I feel like I'm the coach, and I'm really delegating and really helping bring them up. And I do have a great team where right now we could scale a little bit bigger. I have no desire to ever be 100 songwriters, but I have noticed that if you really develop a great team and a great culture, and you're pouring into it constantly and checking the pulse constantly, you can do more than you think you can, because I realize it's not just all up to me, and I'm not a singular person. I have to hire people who have skill sets that I don't.
When you guys are looking for people who have skill sets that you don't, particularly writers, Luke, on the creative end, when you have a prospective artist or writer that you're looking to bring in-house, what sort of qualities creatively are you looking for from somebody?
It's honestly, it's pretty simple. My gauge has always been writers who write songs that I wish I'd written.
Yeah.
So it's, like we just signed a new guy, Derek Barr, and he's had no hits or anything. He's actually out on the road with John Party playing guitar. But the first 5 songs I heard, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. And the recordings, he writes and records. So for me, it's just something compelling, maybe sometimes something that it feels like, oh, I haven't really heard this sound before. But I'm just trying to like write or sign people that I'd want to write with and who write songs that I wish I'd written.
I would also just, if I could just chime in on that, I think one thing that we wrote down in the very beginning that we've really done a good job of sticking to is kind of 3 main rules. Number 1 is no assholes, because there's a lot in the music business. We don't want them in here.
Yes.
Number 2 is that we would believe in their talent, even if everybody in town passed. Luke and I and our team would all passionately believe and go to work for them every day because we feel like the talent is really unique and great. And number 3 is that if they came to have coffee on your couch every morning, you would like to see them coming. Mm-hmm. And yes. I think that, it sounds simple, but I would tell you we've debated these things. We'll go back and forth a million times, but do you actually believe in the talent, even if it comes with the paycheck or not? Do you really want to hang out with this person? And I think if you can really, for us in our culture and team, and it really goes for staff as well, mm-hmm. if we can check those 3 boxes, we can feel good about the investment. And when we invest, we don't invest 1 year. If we do a 4-year publishing deal, the way we see it is we're investing in the life of the event. If it doesn't go well for us or them, then obviously we'll talk about it. We can, move on. But we're not in the business of give someone a year or 2 shot, drop them if there's no income. We're more like, hey, we're going to put so much time and resources and money behind this that if we're going in, we want to know everybody's ready to go all in.
One of the things you guys are doing right now that's pretty unique, I'd say, for a company is, and you've had unique success at it so far, has been to take writers who are known most for writing songs for other artists and very successfully, and igniting artist careers of their own. That is traditionally, I think, a pretty difficult thing to do. You've done it with Lori McKenna in a way that's been absolutely staggering. I'd always known about her work, but I've noticed over the last 5 years, seeing her kind of come into her own right and getting the recognition that she deserves as an artist herself is very cool. So how do you manage that process? To you, Beth, and then Luke, you're in the process yourself of, you released a solo record last year. How do you manage that from the business side? And then Luke, from the creative end, how are you approaching that process differently, if at all, than you are to writing in other ways?
Yeah, I would say, well, first of all, with Lori in particular, she, as you said, you've known about her for years, and me too. Like, I was always a fan. I was always kind of baffled that more people didn't know her and didn't know her work. And I think once I sat down with her and got to know her, I realized she was really having a struggle between writing for country artists and hits and putting out her own albums and supporting those. And it had become this kind of, which one do you want to pick? And I saw it as they both feed each other, and you can't have one without the other, and they're both really important. So I think when we decided to start working together, my whole goal was just for more people to know about her, because I knew the art was exceptional. And I think the one thing she hadn't had was a team of people around her that just said, what do you want to do? How much time do you want to spend on each of these? And then let us go to work. And I have a separate team that helps on management and records than publishing, but we're all in one building. And I think the struggle between a manager wanting you to play shows and a publisher wanting you to write songs had always weighed heavily on her. And so even when we met, she was self-managed, which I couldn't even imagine. So I think just taking the business burden off of her and saying, what do you want it to be? 50-50, 75-25? Like, what does your year look like? What's a perfect year for you? And then and she was real honest. She knew, and she'd say, I only want to stay away from home 3 nights at a time. Cause she's 5 children. She lives in Boston. And so I wasn't pushing her, and I didn't care what her boundaries were. I just needed her to voice them. And then we based it all around that. And I think once we started working within those parameters for her, and we didn't mind which way she went or what she wanted to spend time on, it opened so much up because we were able to build teams through like 30 Tigers and a publicist, and having these people come on and help her it just changed everything. And so I think having a core team and knowing that we always have her best interests at heart, and that kind of back to the goals sheets, like whatever she wants to do that year, that's what we're going to do. And we're going to base it all around that. Sorry, I think I got a cop car going by. But I think that is what I love to do. We do the same thing with Steve Mogler. Mm-hmm. He's a great example of that. And I just love it. I don't like doing one sliver of business and then being like, hope you can figure out how to put that record out by yourself. I want to be like, and that's what I feel like some people do. It's like, as a creative person, what are your hopes and dreams? How do we make that happen? That's what I want to do. It doesn't have to be us doing it all, but I'm going to go help find people to do it, or I'm going to help go set you up with the right business manager or attorney or manager or whoever, because I feel like it's really got to be a good trust environment and a good team. And I feel like Lori and I just really good team, and I really enjoy it.
So Luke, on your level, you've put out this record last year, this solo record. What are you trying to accomplish with that you haven't accomplished before? Is it a different process for you, or is it the same process and just, put under your name rather than someone else's?
Yeah, it's that came about. Honestly, it came about because some of it was during COVID, but I had kind of had a handful of songs that I'd written by myself that I was fully aware aren't the most like pitchable for like hit country artists, but that's okay. And then Beth encouraged me. She's like, I think this would be a good time to make a record. And it was a lot of fun. I have no delusions that it's probably going to lose us money, honestly, but I did print up some cassettes if you want a free one. But it was, for me creatively, it was so great because it is different when you sit down and think, what do I really want to say? Not, you don't have that extra, I wonder if somebody else would think that or say that. So, and as far as the recording process as well, I did a lot of it at home, and some tracking stuff in Nashville, and then I got Bill Bottrell to mix it, who's pretty much not in the music business anymore, but he was super, super cool to work with. And for me, it was just one of those very creatively fulfilling, and I just had these songs that were really pretty personal, and so it just kind of made sense to put them together, and it was a lot of fun. A lot of time alone.
I would say, though, I think a lot of people would see, or a lot of publishers might see that as time away from writing hits. Mm-hmm. Publishers can sometimes get frustrated, with that, because they're like, oh, we're paying you to write for hits. But I have found that every time you let writers creatively kind of like find their own pulse and hone in on what they love and what they want to say and come back to the center of their craft, you always come out on the other side better. And they always know who they are even more going into writes, and they feel even more excited to go in rooms, and they're not going to be burnt out, because we're not trying to get 5 songs a week that all sound average. We're in such a competitive business. If I can get one great one that stands out, even better, so that the creative process isn't just all cranking out songs. It's got to be great and on a level that can compete and is unique. And I think that's what letting writers sometimes step out of the rat race for other people and just reconnect with their creative style is so helpful. And like when we worked with Natalie, she did that. Lori, Luke, Steve. I mean, I just, there's so many writers that have, I think, what is like an artistic voice that people love to hear, but also is good for them to express.
You mentioned a moment ago, Luke, that one of your latest signings is excellent at recording his own music. You mentioned with this record of yours how much of it you did in your studio or project studio. I'm such a big advocate myself of, if you're a songwriter, there's no reason why you're not very handy in the studio and able to do that stuff for yourself. I think it's the way of the future. Can you kind of describe how your writing process has changed? I mean, I'm sure 20 years ago when you moved to Nashville, there wasn't a project studio where you were putting beats together and stuff like that. So can you kind of describe how you became competent in that domain and how it has changed your songwriting over time?
Yeah. Well, like you say, when I started, I pretty much would literally do a work tape. I got my notebook, my guitar, and a boombox. Messed around with a 4-track cassette for a while, but they sounded really bad. So it was probably like a few years after I had a publishing deal, I finally could afford and bought my first Mac laptop, and it had GarageBand on there. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like 4-track on steroids, and I can it's not like rewinding tape. And it just changed my world, because I would record demos with Nashville musicians, incredible musicians here in Nashville that the publishing company paid for. They would sound really nice and polished and good, but I wasn't the best at communicating what I was hearing in my head. So I'd get these demos back and I'm like, it just doesn't, it's not right. Once I was able to do that on my own, it just changed everything. And even my demos started just getting more unique. I could spend the time in there to come up with a cool bass line or whatever, however I want to do the percussion. And so I agree with you. I encourage anybody who just writes to really sit down and mess around and learn how to, because you can really learn how to put a song together in the studio, because you can really see a song through. A lot of my hits, I would say, they weren't just because of the lyrics, but it was the musical hooks that you come up with when you spend the time to actually think about that part. And so I have a blast doing it. And I, now I work in Logic or Ableton, and a lot of days we'll write a song and I'll have pretty much a pretty good sussed out demo. And sometimes I'll bounce those out. And then if I want to go in and get a live drummer, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, a MacBook off the shelf probably has more tools than the Beatles had at their disposal.
Oh, which makes that music even that much more amazing, because I'll still hear stuff. I'm like, how did they do that?
I know.
It's unbelievable.
You guys are coming up at 10 years in business. It's a miracle to be 10 years in business in any business, I would say, if you've owned one, and many of our listeners have. But in music, it's even more so. Congratulations for getting there. Where does the next 10 years take you guys? And also, I know you've taken some of the revenue from your company and you've rolled it into a ministry that's very important for you guys. So maybe you could talk about what the next 10 years look like and why that charity is important to you guys.
Yeah, I think when we first started, we sold some of Luke's catalog. We put money in an account for 5 years, and we did a 5-year business plan. And Luke and I pretty much said, we're going to take this risk on for 5 years and see if we can do it. And at the end of that, we'll either find a partner, or we'll sell or move on. And I think at that point, I really thought the 5-year mark was the mark. And what I've learned coming up on 10 years is that 1 to 5 is hard in some ways, and then 5 to 10 is hard in different ways. And so I wouldn't do it any differently, but I'm really learning that as a leader, you are constantly growing and changing, and each stage presents different challenges. So I continue to learn that I don't know anything, and I'm open to having mentors and asking lots of questions and growing. And so I know that's going to continue to happen as we keep going through the next 10 years. I would say I don't really have particular goals other than, I mean, we kind of do year to year, but long-term goals are hard.
Now, hold on. You have them put out goal sheets, but you don't have to put out a goal sheet?
Yeah, no, I do.
They
I do a goal sheet every year. Don't worry, on all my stuff too. But I think the long-term goals are hard for me because every job I ever had, I didn't know existed. And I think the thing about the music business is it moves so quickly. We weren't able to put out records like Steve and Lori and all these new artist development projects. And that wasn't even an option if you didn't have a record deal. So everything, every year, it just feels like the music business shifts quicker.
Mm-hmm.
So our ultimate goal Luke and I just want to keep doing this. We want to continue investing in great people we love that are super talented. We want to continue to grow at the right rate that feels comfortable for everyone. Obviously, I just keep wanting to see more creatives have success and their creative dreams fulfilled. I don't have any grand plan to sell it all off and ride into the sunset. I think that's one thing. Luke and I both, we love this. We want to keep doing this, and it is challenging every year. It does not get easier. It gets harder because, publishing is a very slim business when it comes to making money, and it's really hard. And so I think as it changes and grows, it's like we're always just kind of up for the challenge and want to be involved in the new fun music that's coming out. And so if we can just continue to do this and love who we work with, we really feel like that's a success.
Oh yeah. I mean, just for me as a writer, I'm still just as excited to create a new song. Or I get really inspired by new writers and people I hear. This town is so full of so much talent, and I'm always hearing some new thing like, man, how has that never been thought of? Or it's just, waking up, getting to be creative. If I'm doing this in 10 years, oh man, this is going to be awesome.
And I still get excited about new artists and development. Like if I hear a brand new artist that no one hears, I'm just like so excited to dig in and take that to the world.
What do you think it is about your disposition that you can hear someone who's brand new and very talented, and it doesn't put you into a jealous or competitive place? It puts you into a place of inspiration. Like, what do you think it is about your character that puts you into the latter rather than the former category?
Well, I think a couple things. One thing is there's so much talent in this town. Getting to work with like Hall of Fame songwriters, and then brand new people who come in who are doing stuff that it's just hard to believe. Just on the daily co-writers that I have, I'm like, holy cow. It's hard. Believe me, there's been songs I've heard that, I mean, I don't know if it's jealous. You're right though. You can either be jealous or be like, wow, that should push me to be great.
Right.
The one thing I always try to remember is back to that first time I came to the Bluebird Cafe when I heard those writers and how inspired I was, because I was like, wow, that is amazing. I really try to keep that and just recognize something when it's great. And then honestly, just my faith like keeps my feet on the ground, gives me a perspective that no matter how much success I have or don't have, it's not who I like. My worth is not judged on how many hits I have or how much success. And if I never have another one, so at some point that's happening, and it's closer today than I was yesterday today.
Yeah.
Also, I would say like the ministry that we early on found and just jumped in and got excited about was Preston Taylor Ministries. Like our first year, we opened Creative Nation, and it really spoke to us because we didn't know it existed, but it's a ministry here in town, literally in Nashville, not far from Music Row, and they pour into at-risk youth and families in amazing ways. Just watching like the amount of things they do to love on and help, inspire, and encourage these children and families. Luke and I went and visited once, and we were so blown away by these volunteers and the staff that we couldn't believe, one, we had never heard of it, and two, that they don't use any money for advertising and they don't take any government funding. So I think we were like, what can we do? We are not as good as these volunteers at working with children, and we can't do what they're doing. But the one thing we told Chan, who's the executive director, we were like, what we know is music. Could we put on a show and just have all of our writers play and try to like just raise awareness and money and volunteers? And so we did that our first year, and it's become our annual show, where every year it's the one show we ask all of our clients to play for free. And it's something everyone looks forward to because we're all together. And we give all the money to Preston Taylor Ministries, but then we also are able to like just raise awareness and tell people this is in your backyard. And if you're looking for somewhere to volunteer or give money, they're in need, and that we know they're using it for the right things and the right reasons. And then from that, we ended up getting more involved, and Luke's been a lunch buddy. We did a little music program over there at one point.
And it's a good chance for me to reach out to some artist friends. We've had some great guests like Casey Musgraves played, Thomas Brett, John Party. I mean, people that I could not afford to pay to play a show. But so yeah, it's just a really cool night, and our writers, I feel like, get a lot out of it as well.
It feels like you make more of an impact too if you partner with one. Like I think in the beginning we thought, let's do this for a lot of people, and nobody felt the direct impact. But once we sat down with their team and we said, we want to partner in everything we do at Creative Nation, we're going to want to give to you. Like we do proceeds from anything usually we sell, we just give to them. And so I think it's been this amazing partnership. Watching them get in a new school bus, or watching them take kids off the wait list or start a new location, that really inspires me to want to keep working.
Well, I tell you what, everything that you guys have described, from the creative end to the business end to this charitable aspect, it's so singular. It's such an only in America story, and it's been a real pleasure to pick your brains this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
This week's show is brought to you by Bandzoogle. Built by musicians and for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform to build a beautiful website for your music. Use promo code TWS, the initials of our podcast, TWS, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. Luke Laird's latest album is entitled Music Row, available everywhere music is sold or streamed. If before we meet again, you sit down to write, please remember, an expensive drug habit is not a song, a compelling Instagram account is not a song, and most importantly, reverb is not a song. So let all that take care of itself, and for you, just keep your eye on the song.